Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with an awesome new knife consult for you on the Mass Drop Knives and Ochs Orca. This is an exciting new knife because it brings to the market a very accessible Mokuti laden knife right here. That's right, Mass Drop, the people who are typically known for making generally budget knives. This is the Mass Drop and Gavco Knives Thresher. We'll bring this one out, but this one was right around $200. They usually make knives around the $90 to $200 range. This knife is coming in at $325, but I want you to focus on that price not as a high price, but rather as an entry point for knives with fancy materials. And who better to bring that to you guys than me, Dr. Frunkey. I am a big fan of fancy materials on knives. You've seen it all come through my channel, the fancy carbon fibers, the Timascuses and the Mokutis and all of the fancy things. But those things are very expensive. Those materials in and of themselves cost hundreds of dollars to buy a piece of it. And so the knives that come with those materials on them are often incredibly expensive. What Mass Drop has done with this knife is made that much more accessible. The $325 price point is relatively unheard of for having these kinds of materials, and so it's very interesting for me to have this knife in hand. Let's go ahead and get some vital signs on this guy. When it came in with a standard Mass Drop case right here. You're used to this if you've seen one of their knives. Inside it came with this Ochs branded microfiber towel, so that's cool. There is no Mass Drop branding on here at all, and so that's cool to see. You get one of those interesting towels. Let's go ahead and get some vital signs on this guy. Up front, you have a 3.5-inch blade. Overall, you're looking at 8 1/4 inches. You've got a handle at 4.5 inches with an effective grip area right at 4 inches. The handle is a little bit thick with these contoured scales like this, but it's only coming in here at its thickest point at 0.587 inches, so just over half an inch. And the blade stock is going to be your standard 160 thousandths right there. This knife with the carbon fiber and titanium frames is coming in at a weight of 4.47 ounces. So a little bit heavy, a little bit over the 1-to-1 ratio that I seek to find in my EDC knives. The blade inches per ounces of weight ratio right there. But when you're getting into one of these fancier type of knives, just with like with custom knives, a little bit of extra weight is not really a problem, and I find that under 5 ounces is pretty much okay for any EDC task, any EDC knife. So let's go ahead and bring out another couple of knives for a size comparison. I will bring out my trusty Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and Para 3, where you will see that the Orca slots right in between them, but a little bit more towards the Para 2 size category. So not a small knife by any means. I will bring out the Koenig Knives Arius, which is significantly larger than this knife. Let's see here. What else do we have sitting around? I have a Spyderco Paisan right here. So you'll see this is a medium-sized knife. I would not call this a large knife. I would certainly not call this a small knife. I'll bring out the Thresher. Perhaps if you're familiar with Mass Drop knives, you may have experienced the Thresher. These are very similar in overall profile right here. I like that Mass Drop makes this size of knife. Let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically. Before we do that, I must mention that Reate knives produce this knife. That's right. Mass Drop did not go with WE knives for this build. They have been making many of their recent builds, including the Thresher that I've brought out a couple of times. They went with WE knives to make them. This time they went with Reate, which is a very interesting choice because Reate is really known as sort of the, at least in my perception, sort of the highest or the best of the Chinese knife manufacturers. And often they make the most expensive knives because they collaborate with high-end makers. It was interesting to see Reate's take on a budget knife by producing this one right here. And I want to say that they did a good job. Just initial quality impressions are excellent. This has every single bit of the quality that you would expect from a Reate-made knife. And so let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically, and I will show it to you, starting with this blade. An absolutely stunningly beautiful harpoon drop point style blade. It says Ochs Works on the front. RWL 34 is the steel. RWL 34 is very similar in many ways to ATS 34 or CPM 154. It's named after Robert W. Lovelace, and it's produced by the folks over at Damasteel. It is a powdered metallurgy steel, and it is engineered to be an excellent stainless knife steel, and it is. And when Reate gets their hands on it, they certainly know how to take good care of it and heat treat it right. And so I'm excited to see RWL 34. You might want to consider that similar in many ways to something like an S35 VN or something of a nicer knife steel. It is certainly no slouch, and I'm excited to see it. What they've done with it is made a beautiful belt satin finish on the primary bevels and the harpoon up there. There is what appears to be a hand-rubbed horizontal satin along the flats, and they've done bilateral titanium blue thumb studs on there. So not only is this knife a flipper, which you can obviously see there, it's also a thumb stud knife, and it does actually work quite well with the thumb studs. These are just standard, regular, everyday thumb studs, the sort of stepped pattern that you've seen on many other knives, but it provides a nice amount of traction, and it works very well for opening the knife. The flipper tab, as you can see, is a standard looking flipper tab, nothing too fancy, nothing too big, but nothing too small either. It's certainly there, not particularly stylized with the rest of the knife, a very standard flipper tab, but it has good geometry as with all Reate flippers, and just like all Reate flippers, it flies out of the handle. One thing that I really enjoy about flipping this knife is the opening sound. I don't know if you've caught it during this video, and maybe it won't come through very effectively on the microphone, but I really enjoy the sound that this knife makes when you open it. The only other knives that I really know that have a similar acoustic nature, I'm going to go so far as to say Andre Thorburns. This has a very resonant and acoustic sound on opening, and it makes sense because it's built similarly as a liner lock configuration to some of those Thorburns that have that classic sound. That's one of the most impressive features, is that sound, the crisp detent on firing and the very nice sound when it locks up. I do really, really like that. That is a tactile and fidget thing that a lot of knife guys are looking for on their knives, and this one has it in spades. It's really, really impressive, the acoustical nature of the opening of this knife. Now, let's move back to the pivot and talk about that. This is running on ceramic ball bearings like all other Reate knives. It has a ceramic detent right there that is not shaved. It's just a standard detent. It does not have a steel lock bar insert. This is a liner lock knife with no steel lock bar insert. However, there is no lock stick. The geometry seems to be great. I feel no lock stick whatsoever. The pivot hardware should certainly be commented on. As you can see, there are some fairly standard screws surrounded by Mokuti pivot collars. What is Mokuti? You're going to see Mokuti over here as well. Mokuti is a funny name for titanium alloys that have been forge welded together and then patterned. What I mean to say is there are different types of titanium. You can get a couple of bars of a couple of different types, stick them into a forge, weld them together, and then take them out and fold them while they're hot, smash them with a hammer, and then stick them back in and weld them again. And you can come out with an interesting material that when you flame it, you put a flame to it or you anodize it in an anodizing bath, you get differential coloration on the different alloys in the metal. The name is a play on the word mokume, mokume gane being the similar thing seen in jewelry where you use other alloys. You can find Mokume on a couple of knives that are in my collection. I'll show you the Gareth Bull Shamwari that uses Mokume consisting of bronze, copper, and nickel silver. So those three alloys, if you switch those to titanium alloys, now you have Mokuti. Mokuti is actually a proprietary product, a name that is produced, and the name of a product that is produced by a single group, Chad Nichols, aka Nichols Damascus. They are a group out of Mississippi, United States, in the United States, and they make this material in-house. So this is true Chad Nichols Mokuti. This is some of the legit stuff. You know, there are really only two places that are the most common sources for this material, one being Chad Nichols and Nichols Damascus, and the other being Alpha Knife Supply. They make a material called Timascus. Perhaps you're familiar with that. That is the name of their product. This is Mokuti. And so it's interesting and very cool to me that they went with this material. This is the same material that you're going to find on multiple high-end knives. I'll bring out my Frank Fisher and Robert Carter Talon. This also features Chad Nichols Zircuti in the pivot collars and Mokuti on the pocket clip. So here we have a knife for $300 with the Mokuti hidden hardware pocket clip. We'll get to that. And here we have a knife that costs, as near as makes no difference, 10 times as much from custom makers. I mean, I'm going to laugh at myself about the price difference here. Obviously, this one is very special. It's extremely rare, and it has meaning to me that justifies the cost in my mind. But this is what I'm talking about here. The accessibility of these materials are suddenly very real, and I feel that this is sort of a paradigm shift for these fancy materials. So let's keep moving along with the knife here and move back to the handles. On this particular edition, they have marbled carbon fiber scales done with a faux bolster in the sort of hammered pattern. Eric Ochs does a lot of bolster designs, and he likes to do the hammered copper look for many of his knives. So you'll see many of his knives that look like this. This is a fake bolster where they milled it through the carbon fiber, and then they've milled this what they're calling a stippled pattern. Really, I'm going to call this the hammered pattern, because I believe that's really what they're copying here. And they also offer this in a different level of trim. I've been sort of focusing on all the fancy stuff. They also offer these knives for $200 with G10 and planar hardware. You can get it. It all comes with anodized titanium hardware, but if you get rid of the Mokuti and carbon fiber, you drop the price to $200 from $325. So check out those versions as well if you're interested in that. This is, as I've mentioned, a liner lock model. It features some cutout areas right here, so it makes it easier to disengage the lock. I would have liked to have seen a small extension of this side to make it a little bit easier. You really just have to kind of jam your thumb into this small recessed space in order to get the knife open. It's not uncomfortable, it's just not, I don't know, tactilely enjoyable so much. It's hard for me to really quantify that. It could have been a more enjoyable experience if we're looking for quality improvement and end user enjoyment here. There is no internal milling. I think this may have been a missed opportunity. Perhaps they could have cut some circles out of this, reduce the weight just a little bit more, because it's a very nice EDC size and blade shape and everything. They really could have maximized the weight, at least for the more simple versions as well. And as I mentioned before as well, there is a hidden hardware 3D milled Mokuti clip. This is really impressive to me. This is a big piece of Mokuti that they really had to be brave enough to turn into a Reate style everyday carry clip, and it has to be user friendly, and it certainly is. It has a very nice amount of spring and ramp and tension to it, and it functions beautifully as a pocket clip. So what do I think of this knife overall? Just as a knife, if I were to just take away all the fancy materials, this is quite a nice everyday carry knife. For $200, you're getting a nice steel, an RWL 34, you're getting ceramic internals, you're getting a titanium frame with nice G10 and 3D milled titanium pocket clip. You're getting an excellent action, wonderful acoustics that I would compare only to Mr. Thorburn. Just a really nice, crisp, and loud action on that knife right there. And you're getting a beautiful knife. That drop point harpoon blade combined with this handle, it just has a very nice profile. It's a handsome looking knife, and you can actually like carry this around and be proud of it, even at the $200 price point. In my size 8 sterile glove, extra large glove hand, I get a full-handed grip, and my hand is very comfortable. There are no hot spots. They've done an amazing job with this clip, really rounding it off and chamfering the edges so that there are no hot spots. This geared backspacer fills the palm and gives you a nice full grip on the knife, and you have a very secure grip. The index finger and the remaining fingers really just fall into those grooves, and it's very comfortable. When you're holding the knife in the pinch grip, which I do sometimes, you have a lot of control with this stippled bolster right here. The over the top feel is amazing with the harpoon swedge right there. And so this is just an excellent knife. I really think that take away all the fancy materials and you have yourselves a very excellent foundation of a knife. I think that you should look at this knife if you're into Eric Ochs' work, Eric Ochs Works. Or if you've been looking to just get a new knife in some interesting materials. Now, if you want to really enter into the materials game, this is an opportunity that is unlike any other I've ever seen. I don't know of any other knives selling for this price with these materials in this kind of a nice combination from Reate Knives. If Reate Knives was selling this under their own moniker, they might be charging you $500 for this. It's amazing to me that Massdrop has been able to come together and make this happen. And I'm really impressed. Massdrop is going to continue to do this. As a matter of fact, they're actually changing their name. And so this will soon just be Drop. They're going to be dropping the Mass from there, and it's just going to be called Drop. This is going to be one of the last knives maybe with this logo on it. I'm not sure when they're going to switch that over. But do pay attention. They've actually already changed their name and even their website. So I'm going to leave links down below with how you can get this. I have a special link, I believe, for my own. I'll see if I can put that down below. And this is a really special knife, guys. What I want, the take-home point on this knife in this configuration is that this makes fancy materials accessible to the common man. Yes, it's $325, but it's not $3,000. And it's pretty much every bit as nice as a lot of the knives that cost that much. Reate has done a very good job of making a quality knife, and Massdrop has done an amazing job of keeping the price down. So definitely check this knife out, guys. If you're looking to get into high-end materials for the first time, this is the place to go. I really think you want to check it out and see what you think about carrying a knife with these kinds of materials. Go and check this out. Thank you guys for watching. Leave some comments down below about what you think of this knife. Go ahead and click like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Head over to Instagram. Follow me as Dr. Frunkey. Go over to Patreon and help me out and support me at patreon.com/Dr. Frunkey. And as always, guys, take care.